I am Tommy, and you are on the lifeboat. Where there is smoke, there is very often fire, people, and sometimes there's a vape. This case we've talked about in the past. This is disturbing. This is human tea. This is everything that we've been talking about, and this is just dandy for all of those people. Hey, there's my man. What's happening, Casper? It's good to see you. Damn, we have 3 of the 4 horsemen in here. I love it. This is one of those cases that I don't know. It's a lot more fun talking about white dudes if you really want to know the truth. And just because of the fact that I will get hate emails from people that don't know a whole lot about my story and about Q and about everything else, who say that I'm going after the diddler and his friend and all of that based on the fact that these people's skin color is different than mine. So it's nice to be able to do something with the Alexander dirtbags in Florida and bring to light a case that's as ugly in a lot of ways as Diddy is. Lisa Trimble, Majesty, good to see you. Lacey Silver, what's happening? I'm glad that you are spending time with us. Tim Louis, Great Britain, good to see you. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Can we get some ones, people? Some thoughts, prayers, and good vibes going out for her daughter. And you know what? I'm going to put an extra one in there just for anybody that needs it, because it has been tough, isn't it? Times are tough. Casper is here. What's going on, Sam? Glad you're here, brother. Lacey Silver, Pamela Morrow, the Rusty Glider. Glad you're here. There is the Johnny Scoville. What's happening, Johnny? Tell you what I want you to do, people. I want you to make a lot of noise, for real. Number one, if you know who the Alexander brothers are, put a deuce in the chat for me. If you have heard this story before, because there's a lot of background on this number, but if everybody is aware of what I'm talking about, we're going to do a little less of that background. So if you could put a deuce in the chat, if you are familiar with this case and you know what's going on. If you don't, put a 3. And I really do hope that your daughter feels better and feels better quickly. All right. So most of you have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Lacey, a couple of you don't. We'll do a quick update, right? So there are, everybody says there are 3 Alexander brothers. Truth be told, there are 4 Alexander brothers. One just happens not to be a scumbag. But the other 3 most assuredly are. Tal and Orrin Alexander were born July 2nd, 1987. You see, these cats are twins. And they are, they have an interesting mix, right? They have, they're Jewish, but they also have some really strong ties to people in Brazil. And a lot of this is getting brought up in court because right now these guys are putting together a bail package. And the bail package is for what? The bail package is because these 3 brothers are accused of SA and violently R-wording people for decades. Orrin, Alon, and Tal, their older brother, systematically since high school, allegedly since high school. Hello, Willow. Hello, Sharon. These people have been using chemicals to incapacitate women so that they could SA and R-word them. Different from Diddy in some ways and very similar to Diddy in some ways. Let's go over the similarities. He's using a substance to knock these women out and take away their ability to say no. That's a great question, and I will get to it in a second because that's a really, really great question. Yeah, if Johnny Scoville and I were locked up, they would keep us apart. We went to jail together once on the same day, and someday I'll tell the whole story of that because it's a really long story. But my brother Johnny and I got arrested on the same day, and this was at a time in our life when we were balling. We had a ton of money and everything else. But when they brought us in, we were both bald. We both had on a white polo shirt, right? And the same color shorts. And we were both wearing Teva sandals. And they arrested us like it wasn't planned. We just happened to be chilling in the same outfit. And when we got to the jail, they took a card with our picture and our name on it, poked holes in it, put a string around it, and forced us to wear it around our neck. I don't know what the hell they thought we would do. I mean, we could switch personalities, but we were still going to end up getting hemmed up. No, brothers can even live in the same cell in prison. It depends completely on the prison. Now, in the feds, that would be the Bureau of Prisons that would make that decision. The BOP would decide whether or not this had anything. I mean, this was legitimate to put these guys in the same cell. Matt, you're on the way back from work in the UK. Well, drive safely, please. And if you're on the train, kick back, enjoy. It's a little lifeboat. So they do separate people. However, over time, like the Menendez brothers could get to the same prison and did. but it takes a long time. You have to establish with them that you can be trusted, that you're not an inmate that's going out and doing crazy stuff. You're not making wine. You're not trashing people. You're not knocking people down or anything like that. Together in the same pod. Yeah. Dead Stuff says, oh, I have seen family together in the same pod because this is so high profile. They probably are going to separate them. They might be. This is a really bizarre case. These guys got arrested in Florida for what should be a pretty simple case of R-wording and essaying people. Oh, you're on foot. Well, then definitely watch where you're going. This is a weird case that these guys use chemicals to assault women. They recorded a lot of this. There is so much digital evidence that these idiots texted back and forth to one another, talking about which girls were going to be targets, allegedly talking about who would go first. There are images of these girls, lots of images of these girls in the process of being essayed. That's right. I remember hearing about those, the brothers, a couple of bank robbers that were in the same unit. Dummies. And they were consistently doing this since high school, right? Now, what enabled them to do this is an insane amount of money, right? These guys had money you would not believe. The largest real estate transaction for a single family home in Miami is a record that they hold, having sold. They also sold the most expensive home ever sold, right? U.S. record or whatever, $238 million. Somebody multiply that by 6%. Find out what wonder what the closing costs on that puppy are. But this was a activity they did as a family, right? Oddly enough, one brother had nothing to do with it, right? The rest are complete and utter dirtbags. I find that fascinating. But these three are tied in together tight. So this is fascinating. You're going to love this. These guys want to put together a bail package that will get them out of jail. Now, they already bailed out in the state of Florida because they've got state charges and they got fed charges. They already bailed out on the state stuff to the tune of about $10 million one of the brothers put up to bail himself out. Now he's got to go and deal with the feds. They put together a bail package, drum roll please, over $100 million each. You heard that right. They put up a bail package, and these guys are so used to, and I don't just mean the Alexanders. I mean the Alexander brothers. I mean Diddy. I mean people like Voldemort. People like the guy that did get out on bail from Abercrombie and Fitch. Now, are you seeing why the difference between the Abercrombie and Fitch guy, by the way, side note? Dude, on a side note, do you see the difference? Do you see what I'm saying? This was an old man that his crimes he was accused of are almost a decade old. He's at the end of his rope. He's probably not going to be around a whole lot longer. It is a very different situation than you've got with three really young guys by all accounts, right? These guys are under 40. These are young men, and they are filthy freaking rich young men, right? With all kinds of power, and they're not used to being told no. And that brings us to the fun that we're going to have here today. These idiots put up a bail package of $100 million apiece, and they didn't want to get moved from Florida to New York, where they're going to be facing these accusations in the Southern District of New York. They wanted to stay in Florida because they got legal representation there that they can meet with on a daily basis, right? And on top of that, that's where their girls are. That's where their kids are, all this. So on Christmas Eve, their lawyer reaches out and to the judge. He reaches out to the judge on, not New Year's, on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, he reaches out to the judge and says, we don't want my clients to be shipped to New York. Can we hold that process off for a little while? Do me a favor and put a deuce in the chat if you think that there is no way on God's green earth that Tommy Scoville could have had his attorney call up the judge on Christmas Eve to see if maybe I could just stay in town because I'd like to spend more time with Reese before I actually get prosecuted. Are you kidding me, man? Does that seem like we're getting off on a bad start? Now, the only shining spot in something, because that should make you grit your teeth a little bit, right? I know Casper's going, what the actual, yeah, right? What? A lot of twos. This ain't right, right? Yo, sorry. That was This is kind of bizarre, don't you think? But anyway, it has always been my experience, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, anyone, but it's always been my experience that when you start asking a judge to do things that are really outside the realm of what they normally do, like, hey, bro, can I call you on Christmas Eve? You're not going to do well, right? But it gets better. So for the bail hearing, which is now in the Southern District of New York, we're no longer farting around down in Florida, where all of his pals who are attorneys, he's known these guys a very long time. All of these brothers have had these attorneys for eons. They're homeboys almost, right? At least that's certainly how it looks when you're seeing them in there. But what happens is these guys go into the Southern District of New York and they walk into a courtroom, and you know what? They're probably not really well versed in how that's going to be. Because if you're an attorney, every place you practice has different kind of local rules. Anybody see My Cousin Vinny? Right? Remember when My Cousin Vinny went down there and the judge was like, hey, I don't know how you do it in New York, but down here in Alabama, right? This is how we do it, blah, blah, blah. Well, the same kind of thing happens. And normally what you do is you get representation in the city. So you go get an attorney who practices every day in the Southern District of New York and is in these courtrooms every single day, knows the judge, knows the prosecutors, knows the filing clerks, knows the woman that, right? The court reporters. That's not what they did. They went in there and they decided that, just like My Cousin Vinny, maybe it would be a good idea to try this case, right, at the bail hearing. I'm going to give you a great piece of advice, right? I don't care if you're a lawyer. I don't care if you're a convict. I don't care if you're just anybody. Maybe don't do a bail hearing before you've had a chance to see, discovery. Can you imagine going in and trying to argue for your client that, hey, these charges are ridiculous, right? He said in this room that in one of the videos, you can clearly see a woman getting up after intercourse. The benchmark, apparently, for consensual sex is if you can stand up afterwards, you were into it, right? The judge did not do well with that. The judge said something along the lines of, if that's the standard, you lose, right? If that's the bar, you lose. $100 million a pop. And these guys go in there without the benefit of knowing even what the judge and everyone else is looking at. This is one of the dumbest pieces of lawyering I've ever seen on earth. And the only explanation for this, because these lawyers aren't hacks, these are high dollar mouthpieces. The only explanation that I can come up with for this is that the Alexander brothers, they're not really liking this whole incarceration thing. See, they wanted to get this bail hearing done and done now. And it's the worst possible thing you could do if you were the Alexander brothers. Number one, let's be really honest. We live in a world where black and white is viewed by a lot of people. Some of us don't give a crap, but a lot of us do. And I'll tell you something. If you keep Sean Combs in prison after he puts up a $100 million bail package, and by the way, his bail package, Diddy's, the way that his attorneys went in to argue his bail versus how the jackwagon for the Alexander brothers did it, it's obvious that he's a yes man for his client. And that's going to kill you as an attorney. That's a nightmare because that attorney walked into a buzzsaw. That attorney went in and said, made all of these arguments. They brought in a polygraph test that one of the brothers took. The older brother, the one that is not a twin, apparently, took a polygraph test in front of, are you ready? In front of several people who at one time worked for the federal government. Well, hell, I know I feel better. Hey, speaking of My Cousin Vinny, my fiance knows all of the lines from that. We actually work that one into our repertoire quite often. Babe, you just missed a couple of really good references from My Cousin Vinny. I'm actually weaving My Cousin Vinny through this entire story. But this is 2025, and we're talking now exactly about what this year is about, right? This isn't a case of people R-wording. This is a case of human tea, right? Let me tell you something. There are people now discussing fake parties that are thrown every day in the U.S., right? This is actually apparently such an established thing that everyone knows about it. There are nicknames for it, like they have model parties, they have actress parties, where a bunch of really wealthy dudes, right? Dudes, make no mistake, not people, guys, wealthy guys get together and they'll have wranglers bring in a bunch of people. Yes, I would love to push. Quibs is going to be live in a couple of hours. I don't think you want to miss that. If you have not been over to Relatable Reese, if you could put a thumbnail up, we have been talking constantly. Hold on one sec. This is actually really funny because this is going to be Sean Atwood. Hello, Tommy Scoville. Good. How are you? I'm currently live on the lifeboat, but I thought it would be funny if I answered it while you were live. I just didn't want to miss another one of your calls. Can I text you as soon as I'm not live? All right, brother. Yeah, I should be off in about 45 minutes or so. Perfect. All right, thanks, brother. That's my it's the other guy I create content with. But 2025 is the year of the T. I talked about this yesterday, and you know what? You're going to get sick of hearing it. I promise you are. But if a person is being enticed, if a person is being tricked, if a person is being recruited, right? Any of these things to get somebody across a state line for the purpose of, right, cash being generated from smacks. If you happen to have caught the Peacock documentary on Diddy, the one that I talked about the other day, Gene Deal, the bodyguard for Sean Diddy Combs, talks about the making of the band. And a lot of people watched that. It made Diddy huge. There was a big thing with this. First, it was Danity Kane, and then it became Diddy Dirty Money. But there was a group of girls. He put this girl band together. And at one point, Gene Deal says that Diddy said, if these B words keep doing this, I'd drug them and pimp them out to my N words. Right? And Gene Deal went off and said, man, you're talking about somebody's daughter, right? But the mindset, right, of how this is going on, this is not a 2025 problem, right? The Royal Order of Jesters, the sex cult that my fiance and the other members of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse are planning on taking out, have been doing this for over 100 years. And there are so many organizations like this. If you're driving through your city today and you see a place that does massage, I got news for you. Massage parlors shouldn't be open 24 hours a day, right? I get massages. Those places are open from 9 to 5. You book an appointment. When you go in there, you're not expecting anything but a massage. If you walk in and the people don't speak English, you should be very, very concerned about what's going on there. And if you think I'm playing, then you just have never been a criminal or around any. But I assure you that every one of those establishments are not what they look like from the front. And I got more, shocking news for you. Most of those people are paying off the debt that it took to get them into this country. And you're going to drive by them today, I promise you. All right, if you're in any kind of a city, they're all freaking over the place. This is a thing, right? This is a thing. And when we go on and you see text messages of people recruiting women, this is no longer about cheating husbands, right? These are crimes. These are what the people like the Alexander brothers could not get out with $100 million bond each. Now, by way of full disclosure, they were also using chemicals. And I don't think they were using them as well as Diddy. And I'm not being a wise ass. Please bear with me before you get angry at me. I think that Diddy had a chemist. I think Diddy had somebody working. It's so strange how every time they mention gamma hydroxybutyric acid, they also mention methyl dioxymethamphetamine, right? MDMA, Molly, X, right? Disco biscuits. But if you're mixing that in with something like GHB, they weren't wanting unconscious people. In this Alexander case, in the videos, and this is, you talk about getting blindsided, they go in and start talking about bail and this and that. And you got the prosecution knowing that in these videos, they're having to move body parts on these women so that they can assault them. That you're not going to watch these the way they did the freak off tapes and claim, well, it's consensual. Their argument was she was able to get up afterwards. Can you imagine walking into court and saying that? If that doesn't end your career as a lawyer and as a human being, Your Honor, she was able to get up. The judge says, if that's your benchmark, you lost. Good God. Here's another fascinating tidbit. So these guys are Jewish. And I bring that up because they have very strong ties to Israel. And in this bail being turned down, one of the things that they feared was that these individuals might run to Israel, and they were concerned that they would not be extradited. Now, I mean, if you're a lawyer and you're worth a half a fart, right? When you went into court, wouldn't you have the extradition papers? This is how extradition works in Israel. So if these guys did get caught with these particular kind of heinous crimes, they would actually be brought back. Apparently, that's the truth. I looked it up. The other place is in Brazil. And while you could probably run to Brazil and hide, if by some chance they got you, the way they treat freaks in prison makes what we do here look like a holiday. I promise you. They got a really bad reputation for just like, if that's your crime, it doesn't really matter what your sentence is, because they're going to get you before the end of it. It's like it used to be back in the, I was going to say good old days, but that's probably not the right nomenclature. Dude. Sorry. Watched a little of The Big Lebowski. I cheated and only watched I was on YouTube and I just watched like the best scenes from The Big Lebowski. Such a fantastic movie. Yeah, I believe this, Bill Herrera. I think Diddy created, oh, that's not the one I was putting up there, but thank you. That's the one I was putting up. Diddy had a professional medical and chemical staff. Shouldn't be hard to dig into. Those damn feds. I'll tell you something. You know what I tried to do today? My kid, that was how I busted Spanky the first time that he got high. He was talking to me and I said, how was school? He said, good. I said, what did you do today? And he went, do today. That sounds funny. And I was like, uh-oh. But he's sober and I'm not worried about it. He had to have had a staff. What Diddy didn't want was what the Alexanders have on film. Diddy, I don't think gets that. He doesn't derive satisfaction from that. I think, and I'm just an armchair psychologist here, right? But I think, as I've said so many times, Diddy gets off making people do things that they don't want to do. That he wants to go against someone's will. And if the person's unconscious, he can't enjoy that. That's my humble opinion. So I think he was adding just enough go-go, right? Just enough of some form of an amphetamine kind of a product, right? Or even blow, because that's what Jonathan Audie said was in those. He said that liquid blow was all over the place, right? Everywhere you look, there was liquid blow. Whether or not that's the truth, who knows? But I believe that there had to be some kind of a chemical that he was putting in with the G to ensure that he had zombies. He had men and women that were conscious, but just not able to fight him off. And if that's not the most horrific concept, right? Just be human for about 4 seconds and imagine the how horrific it must be to be locked in a body that someone is abusing and you literally cannot make an effort to defend yourself. And then, because of this, when people see the stuff on film, it does not sound right like it would be described. If you, and I don't recommend that you do it because it'll ruin your night. But if you start reading through a lot of the things that people have said about these assaults, they talk about being there but not being there. They talk about being conscious but not being able to do anything. You can very much lead people around in that state and sort of guide them to do things that they would not want to do. That's horrific. And it's not a one-off, is it? Right? This is now, just in this year, we're going to see 3 prosecutions that we know of already for sure, of 3 very, very wealthy individuals, right? We have the guy from Abercrombie and Fitch. We've got the diddler. And now we've got, I'm counting the case of the Alexander triplets, twins and older brother, as a case. There are 43 victims in the Alexander case to date so far. And I love the fact that the judge said there's no way in hell I'm letting these people out. Everybody in the legal world seems to want to harp on the fact that if you're really wealthy, I've seen a couple of videos made now where people say, if you're really wealthy and you have a high profile case of any kind, you don't have a chance of getting out on bail, right? Just because you're rich and you have enough money where you might be able to travel, they're going to pull the plug and say, no, we're not going to let this fly, right? Terrible. Because that's not the case. It's not the case at all. Bernie Madoff got bailed. Remember Bernie Madoff? The largest Ponzi scheme that they ever prosecuted. And Bernie Madoff was able to get out on bail. And people will go, oh, it's because he was white. It's because he was a decrepit, bent over old Jewish dude that was not going to be out smacking people around in the street. And he was so well known that you can actually look it up. When he was out on bail, he went outside and tried to go for a walk. And there were hundreds of people out there yelling at him, where's my money? Like getting in his face. That dude wasn't going anywhere. Right? That dude definitely wasn't going anywhere. You could put that guy up. Now they're coming out with these stupid statements of, yeah, I guess high bail like that is only good for chemical dealers and, cartel member kind of people. You know what? Miss me with that crap. All of this is for show. All of this is for show. And the biggest show of probably this entire month, if you're into law, is to go take a look at that bail hearing. Let's start from the very beginning. The brothers didn't come to the bail hearing. Let me explain to you a little conceptual thing about a bail hearing. The idea is you want to make the people or person you're trying to bail out look like a human being, not a convict. You want the court, right, and the judge and everybody in there to feel that this is a dad, right? This is a son. This guy's got sisters and brothers. This is an individual that has been a member of this society, and you sit up tall and you keep your mouth shut. These guys couldn't be bothered to show up at their own bail hearing. How does their attorney not say, if you don't show up at the bail hearing, you ain't getting bail? Because I promise you. I mean, it's not unheard of, but if you're not showing up at your bail hearing, right, as a convict, and Casper would back me up on this, but if you waive going to your bail hearing, it's because it's a foregone conclusion that you've already lost, right? By the way, bail hearings are not automatic in the feds. You are not assumed a presumption of bail. And depending on your crime, it's even less so. And these crimes, everybody keeps, you hear 15 years, you're 15 years. Let me explain to you, if you don't understand the concept of sentencing in the feds. Every crime is assigned a number, a value. Now, anything that you do in furtherance of that crime will be a bonus number. For instance, if you go in and you rob a bank, it's going to be a base offense level of, say, 21, right? But if you get X amount of dollars, that's going to up it by 3 points. It's going to take it to a 24. And if there was a getaway driver and this is, and there was a spotter outside and all this, and you put it all together, then you get a criminal mastermind bump of a couple of more points. Did you have a piece? That's going to get you a couple of more points, right? Casper says, I never had a bail hearing. Yeah, most feds would say the same thing. Now, that is on the horizontal axis. That is your crime, what you did. And it tops out at a number 43. So a 1 on that list is going to be you took a leak in a federal park. You littered on federal property. Something really stupid, right? That you can actually get probation for. For the first 6 numbers on that horizontal crime list, you could get probation. Now, I've never known anybody that's, most people's crimes are in the 20s or whatever. But when you start getting up into those 40s, then you get the dreaded mandatory minimum. And the mandatory minimum on the crime that these brothers are facing is 180 months. Did you get that? 180 months. Mandatory minimum. There was a case called Booker, right? Booker versus the United States of America. And Booker shook up the entire sentencing system and made it so that the judge had discretion. Because on that axis of all of those crime levels, there's another one that goes along the bottom, right? Right? There's the vertical rather than, and 0 through 43, 1 through 43. And then the other axis, right? The horizontal axis is going to be your criminal record. It goes from 0, I've never been arrested, to a 13. I mean, you can keep going to forever. But once you get by 13, you're at a career criminal, basically. You've got enough points where that's going to max it out. Now, you take those 2 points and you come together and it'll tell you what your sentence is. A guideline, right? From 100 months to 160 months. It pops up in a little box, and that's just how you do it. And those guidelines used to be etched in stone. The judge had no discretion. And the case of Booker changed all that so that the judge could then say, I'm going to take into account X, Y, and Z. I had a friend. He got busted for pew-pews. And it was the, I think, third time. If it wasn't the third, it was the second. But he had a long history of weapon stuff. And at his sentencing, part of his argument was that when he was 13 years old, he had an uncle that used to come into his room and do things to him at night. And when he was about 14 or 15, he bought a piece from somebody. And when his uncle came in, he pointed that thing at him and said, if you ever come in this room again, I'm going to take you off planet Earth. And no one ever hurt him again. Now, I'm not justifying what this cat did, but the judge took that into account and said, I'm not going to do the mandatory minimum, right? And the judge departed, they call it a downward departure. The judge departed from that mandatory minimum. If the Alexander brothers would like to not have a mandatory minimum of 180 months, there's only a couple of things they can do. Because they have WhatsApp messages back and forth that you're not going to believe, right? There are videos and photographs. These guys took trophies, right? They had photos of their victims. These guys have text messages. The feds have text messages back and forth of saying, who's going to get to R-word her first? I mean, this is a wrap. This is not a case that these guys have a snowball in hell chance of beating. There is a mountain of evidence against these guys. For real. I mean, just from what they've leaked already, there's just not much hope for this in terms of them winning. So what these guys got to do now, straight convict talk, they're going to have to try to figure out a way to not spend the rest of their life in prison. And here's some amazing stuff. This might blow your mind, but we've talked before about how you can proffer something up, a 5K1, right? That means that you're going to rat somebody out, or you're going to provide substantial assistance to the government, and they're going to then depart from that mandatory minimum, right, that you're looking at of 180 months, and give the judge discretion to give you less time, right? You're cutting a deal. Now, in a case like this, where someone's R-wording somebody, how do you cut a deal? You're the scumbag. There's not going to be another scumbag above you in theory, right? It's not like a chemical dealer where there's going to be a bunch of people and you can keep chasing it all the way up the line. Well, this is how messed up the federal system is. These guys happen to be huge real estate guys, biggest real estate guys in the world. What if they know people who buy that real estate illegally? What if they know that there are guys coming up from Mexico who literally are bringing the proceeds from selling Bolivian marching powder, and they're laundering it by buying these huge properties in Miami and in New York? Well, you can hand that over to the government and say, this is illegal. And I can give you this, right? You can go out and look for crime that has nothing to do with your case and bring it into help. There have been examples of attorneys that have bought 5K information for their clients on the street. So with a family like this, and that's not illegal, by the way, as long as you disclose all of that to the feds, you can say, yeah, I paid a confidential informant who found out that there's this huge shipment of stuff coming into Miami port, and these happen to be people I knew from houses I sold. Honestly, sounds nuts, doesn't it? But on the flip side of that, there are 43 victims in this. So in theory, they could be charged with 43 of these crimes. You follow? Now, if they get charged with 43 counts of SA and R wording these victims, and they beat all of the charges but 3, the judge has in his or her discretion to sentence them for the ones that they were found innocent on. Let's say that again. You get charged with 100 counts of R, and you beat 99 of them, but you get convicted of 1. The judge legally has in his or her discretion to say, you know what? I'm going to charge you for 100. I mean, I'm going to sentence you to the 100 of them. I happen to believe that you were guilty of them, and the fact that you didn't get found for. I'm not joking, right? So you start getting into these mindsets if you understand just how ugly the odds of you winning. I did this yesterday for craps and giggles. I tried to find a case in the Southern District of New York where somebody beat them. And I don't mean, somebody that got caught with 4 pounds of the chandelier stuff, the crystal stuff in their car or whatever. I don't mean something like that. I'm talking about a big case with somebody's name that's known, or just something that's sensational, right? Southern District of New York doesn't lose. We all know, because it's been quoted on every single YouTube channel, even YouTube channels that talk about cooking. You know, they'll be chopping up a carrot and they'll go, and the feds have a 98.2% conviction rate. Everybody knows this. That's nationwide, right? Now, that doesn't mean that they win every single court case that they go into. They do. But what it means is that most guys plead guilty, especially if they've been in the system once. You might decide you want to fight that stuff the first time. But I said this yesterday on my show. I saw an interview with Freeway Ricky Ross. Freeway Ricky Ross was, first of all, Ricky Ross, the guy that raps, tried to steal his name and is on all that. But Ricky Ross, the real Freeway Ricky Ross, is a legend, absolute legend in the crime world and in prison. The guy was just a legend and did sold a lot of rock blow back in the day. And he and I were, he was at the same prison that both Casper and I did time at. He did time at Black Canyon. But in his interview, he said that what he should have done is get a public defender, because whether he hired Mark Agnifilo and blew his entire fortune, right? And I've heard him say this before, if he could do it all over again, there's no reason whatsoever to buy the most high dollar mouthpiece that you can get your hands on, because all you're going to do is make your case more famous. You're going to make more people hate you. You're going to be the talk of every YouTube channel, and you're just going to lose. You're not. And if you, and I know that people think to themselves, well, you know what though, if you got a really good mouthpiece, right? You got a really good legal team. Yeah, well, you might get convicted. You still have an opportunity to not get that huge sentence. No, you don't. There's no hope for that. In order to not get that mandatory minimum, you got to cut a deal. If you get found guilty at a piss minimum, you're going to get the mandatory minimum. And if you made them, Casper will back me up. Anybody that's been in the feds will back me up on this. If they say to you, the deal we're offering is 20 years or 10 years, and you go, oh, I don't think I want to do 10 years. We take it to the box and you lose, you don't get 10 years, right? Ever. That's not how it works in the feds. You take our deal or we're going to break it off like you've never, ever had anything done to you. We're going to make it painful if you don't take the deal. If you do take the deal, remember that vertical access? And as a bank robber, you're a 21. Take the deal and we'll go 20, 19, 18. We'll drop it down 3-point levels for you. Now, if you take that out, 3-point levels might be 2.5 years in prison. Now you're sitting there going, I could be out in 4.5 years, or I could be out in 7. 4.5 sounds a hell of a lot better, right? So people plead guilty to get that 3-point downward departure. Doesn't matter though. If you have a mandatory minimum, pleading guilty. I mean, if you have a great attorney, the attorney might be able to go in and say, here's what we're going to do. If you plead guilty today, we're going to take the mandatory minimum off the table. That doesn't mean that the judge can't give you the mandatory minimum. If the mandatory minimum is 20 years and they say we're going to take that off the table, the judge can go in and go 25. All you're saying is it's not a lot. And you wouldn't believe how vindictive the federal government is when it comes to sentencing and things like this. And I'm not defending anybody I'm about to talk about, I promise you. But when Casper and I were both in together, there was a T-word guy, kind of guys that go boom, boom on buildings, right? Fly planes places that they shouldn't land and run them into things. You know those guys? Well, there was a guy locked up, and he had been sentenced to 27 years or something because he was part of a conspiracy, and he was a very small part of a conspiracy, but part of a conspiracy that allegedly wanted to blow something up. So dude doesn't want the 27 years, right? Seems like a long time. So after getting convicted, he goes through the process that we're going through with Q currently, where they're going to find out, they're going to try to get him back in for a resentencing, and they succeed. And when they go back in front of the judge says, no, you're right. You're right. 27 years is ridiculous. Have 60. Now, I'm not a big fan of the T people, right? Send them all to Gitmo. I don't much care, right? But if you ask to get resentenced and they just get pissed at you and triple the sentence you got or double the sentence you got, something wrong with that, right? That's not justice. That's just being vindictive. And unfortunately, that's a reality, right? Unfortunately, that is a reality. Casper says, absolutely. I got offered 10 years, refused it, and I got 16. And that ain't a horror story, right? That's not a horror story. I know a guy that got offered 3.5, and said, if you're offering me 3.5, there ain't no chance you got enough evidence to convict me. Right? And they didn't, but they went out and found it, right? Because why? Because they got an unlimited budget and you got in their feelings. And once you start getting in the Fed's feelings, they're going to take your right hand, grab your left ankle, right? They're going to do you dirty. It's what they do. You said I was thinking that. That's a good question. Hold on. Where is it? In order to get a public defender, don't you have to have no money for a lawyer? Yeah, but there's 150 ways to do that. So as of right now, I'll tell you, this isn't going to make me popular, but I'm chasing down plans for Diddy's houses, right? I want to see what the properties look like, because, I mean, I guess we can all assume that these tunnels were made without anybody finding out about them, and there was no permits or whatever, but I have a feeling there were permits for that grotto and some of the other stuff, and I'm pulling that. The house that he lives in Florida was built in 2021. That didn't give him a whole lot of time to start tearing floors up and building tunnels in. Not being an ass, just keeping it real, right? And these are the kind of things that you should probably find out if you're going to keep talking about tunnels and things of that nature. I just want to do a little bit more research, so to speak. And I've been looking into to quite a bit of that. But while looking into it, I found out that house in LA, that doesn't have Diddy's name on it. It's owned by the Bad Boy Films, I believe it's called. If I'm screwing that up, it is a division of Bad Boy that handled nothing but cinema type stuff. And that's what the house's name is in. And his daughter, one of his daughter's names is who the house is listed in. And he has bragged multiple times about how nothing is in his name and this and that. But you can give away your things. There's so many different ways that guys all of a sudden start claiming indigent. But what he should have done, honestly, if it were me and I were Diddy, I would be sitting down right now and I would be trying to figure out, just keep it real. How many dirtbags do you know in your life that you can pull a plug on? How many crime syndicates and operations and things like that do you know of that are going on? Because just like the Alexander brothers, if the diddler doesn't pull the plug and pull it quickly, then what's going to happen is he's going to go to trial. And Diddler is looking at, these are charges that carry mandatory minimums of 180 months. He ain't going to get 180 months. If he takes this to the box and loses, you got to figure they're going to give him 250 maybe, right? Or 360. This dude's going to spend the rest of his life incarcerated, in my humble opinion. He's not doing a lot to mitigate this. I'm fascinated too by where all of these people. Hold on one second. Yeah, Jason, nah, he won't do that. In my humble opinion, he will not do that. If the feds prove Rico, they can seize his assets. They can. They absolutely can. Martin Garcia got offered 18 years, refused, went to trial, and got 105. The dude that was offered 3.5 years and said, no, I'm not going to do it, and they went out and got evidence on him, he got 38. Right? That's insane. Right? Insane. But yeah, Martin Garcia got offered 18, refused, went to trial, and got 105. That can bum a person out. Jason, anybody that would pardon Diddy will destroy their name and their political party. And this is a guy that cares way more about his name and the statues that he hopes they will build for him later. He's not going to do anything that's going to be that controversial, I promise. And neither would the other side. No party is going to. The rule of thumb is this: you can pardon huge chemical dealers and talk about how they turned their life around and the redemption and all of that. Human tea people, no one's ever going to forgive that. The reason that the Alexander brothers are sitting in prison with $100 million apiece offered up, and their own security details, and giving up their passports and giving up their phones and no communication and all the other BS, right? The reason that they're all sitting there is because we're done. As a society, we've gotten to a point where this isn't going to be tolerated anymore. And it's not because of how fantastic the new administration or the last administration or the new boss or the old boss. This social media thing is creating a nightmare for them. Because now as these things are starting to come out, people aren't going away. They're not. These subjects are being pushed to the top. Now, there's 267 people in this chat. If I was talking about Diddy, there'd be twice that, right? And I promise you, anything that has to do with human T gets buried. It does. It gets buried. And if there is a kid involved in the human T, it gets buried even worse. They don't want it out. They don't want it talked about. And you can spend all kinds of time trying to figure out exactly why that is, right? Because the first logical theory is, well, they're all in on it, right? They're all in on it. Horton Thistle, you had a concussion? Can we get some thoughts and prayers for Wharton, please? I'm sorry to hear that, my man. And I'm probably talking way too fast for somebody with a concussion. I wish I had a tissue. Wait a second. I brought one in here. Hold on. Thank you. That's professional right there. See that? That's how it works, people. That's a YouTube house right there. That's a YouTube house right there. This is but we're going to get better right now as a team. I'm serious as hell. I'm not joking. We're not splitting the atom here. But every single day I get an email from somebody that says, what can I do? How can I get involved in this? How can I help? Well, I got something for you. There's 277 of you here, right? If you haven't hit subscribe at the 4 channels, right, of the 4 horsemen, well, that would be the easiest and the fastest way to go. If you got a wrench, please put up the links. 2, Casper, right? Our editor-in-chief, right? You know where you're at. You don't have to put up mine. But Johnny Scoville, who has, well, we won't tell you exactly. Yeah, I get it. Why not? So Johnny's been deep diving and getting really into this from the base of their sex cult. And what I mean by that is we start every year, every time we start talking about that cult, we say what? We say, well, you got to start off by being a Mason, and then you got to become a Shriner. And Johnny is taking a look at both of those entities and how much they know. Right? Because everybody, you run into people every single day. We get emails every single day who say, hey, Freemasons are solid people, dude. Okay. All right. And Johnny says, if you read their bylaws and all of the things that they espouse, well, really solid stuff. If you took their name off it and read it, no cursing, no nothing, everything done in moderation. I mean, all really solid stuff, not fornicating, not cheating, all of this stuff. Unreal. Solid. It's just they don't seem to do any of it. And then, of course, can you put up the link to my fiance, Relatable Reese? And, well, Reese is the survivor that is going to be the face of this and the person that really helps bring this down. When you hear some of these tapes, man, stop thinking about it in terms of a tape. Start thinking about it in terms of 190 of these courts, right? 190 of these courts. There's 100,000 of these justices in the U.S., right? 100,000 of them. How many wives are listening to abusive screaming and threatening and hands getting put on them? Right? Well, without these tapes, we wouldn't know that one was. But I think it's not a stretch to think that with this tape, right, and with this evidence, you think most wives are just going, oh, you're going out for another 5-day cheating session? Well, we'll see you after you leave your loved ones to come back to your family. Lisa, this is a good question. Lisa Trimble says, why did these guys think their bail package would work? If it didn't work for Diddy, looks like they just offered more money. Kind of worse than that, honestly. The lawyer had no illusions. There's no way the lawyer thought that this was going to work. He knew it wasn't. What he had was a bunch of jackwagon clients that got in his face and said, I don't want to be here anymore, man. This place sucks. You want to keep it real? They're Jewish. I'm going to be really honest with you. It's a tough place to do time in the U.S. if you're Jewish. There is a real ugly undercurrent of anti-Semitism in the prison system, right? Most of the white boy organizations in there use the SS symbol from the Nazis as one of their symbols, and the swastika as one of the others. That's got to be a frightening place for three redonkulously spoiled, right, men. Their lawyer kept referring to him through the entire bail hearing as boys. These three boys, bad taste. This lawyer's an idiot. This whole thing was so ugly. I'm going to be doing a longer version of this video here at some point, and I'm going to pull up and let you read all of the documents on this. Because when you actually hear what was said inside this, it's fascinating to see what a judge does when the clients aren't there, when the accused are not in the room. Because lawyers and judges talk to each other differently. They just do. If I'm in the room, they're putting a show on for me. If I'm not in the room, they're talking like they're in law school, right? It's a completely different vibe. And this lawyer looked like an asshat. There's no other way to put it. He looked horrifically unprepared. He looked uneducated. I mean, about the case, about the trial, and the arguments that he was making. If you take Mark Agnifalo's arguments that he wrote in that letter, and then take this abortion of a bail hearing that the Alexander's attorney ran with, and you take both of them together, you might think it was the 1940s. For real. Your defense is she was able to get up. Like if she was incapacitated, Your Honor, I mean, how was she able to stand up after she was R-worded? What? Are you whooping me? God almighty, man. Then you got Agnifalo doing the, hey, she looks like she's liking it. God help us, man. God help us. Thank God that dude's married, because his odds of getting laid ever again with a statement like that had to really do damage. Put a deuce in the chat if you find these things offensive. Am I just becoming the old man? Is that it? Am I becoming my dad? I don't know. I feel like I grew up. I mean, I'm not what you would call repressed, but some of this stuff is effing horrific. It really is. And to think that, we're in 2025. Dude's parked on a gag order. Stop talking about the case. Why? Well, because you asked for it. Agnifalo's team was the one that wanted the gag order, right? Because he didn't want us out here talking about what a scumbag did he was. Or not us, but he didn't want us getting fuel from the prosecutor's office. He didn't want all that getting leaked out so that we could start really bitch slapping, right? So what do? He then goes out and gets around his own gag order by writing this disgusting letter to the courts, which is foul. Make no mistake. It's foul. To look at a tape and say, yeah, after looking at those videos, it's pretty obvious she's having a good time. That's tone deaf. I mean, that may be the most tone deaf thing that, in a case like this, how could you do worse? What the hell could you do worse in a case like this? I mean, as far as being tone deaf. And then there's no way, unless you're, I bet attorneys are absolutely beside themselves at the bail attempt. Again, how do you go in there if you're just getting here? The Alexander brothers were not in court. And by the way, that was by design. They couldn't be bothered. Right? You go handle it. There must have been something really good on Turner or something. Right? They were watching something cool on cable. Can they be reprimanded by the judge? That's a great question. And I'll tell you something. I'm literally going to be blown away if Agnifalo does not get reprimanded by the judge. I'm going to be shocked. I really am. I'm going to be shocked. And I mean, maybe not like let me rephrase that. I don't think he's going to censure them. I don't think he's going to do something official, but I think that Subramanian is going to, he's got to comment on it, in my opinion, or he's going to look tone deaf. Here's the thing with Subramanian, though. He will write out his thoughts. He's like a Supreme Court judge that writes the dissenting opinion. He seems to me to be really kind of over the top, kind of anal. Gail says, did Voldemort get arrested? Not as of 54 minutes ago. And if he did, then it was not being reported as of 54 minutes ago. I usually anything that pops up like that, I'm able to get. He did? Oh, I thought he said he got arrested. He said he's not arrested. Yeah, as of this moment, he is not. And I heard a lot of people panicking about that. I got a lot of people that continually come back and say, he's not going to get. Yesterday, I was live on the Sean Atwood program for 3.5 days. And I realized that it's odd that a person could be live for 3.5 days, all in the course of one afternoon, but I did it. But I was over there and there were people in the chat saying, John Carter's never going to get arrested. It's never going to happen, right? He's the protected class, blah, blah, blah. If it was going to happen, it would have happened. Man, y'all said the exact same thing about Diddy. I still have your emails. You said the exact same thing about Diddy. When his door got kicked in and the arrest didn't happen within a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And I kept saying, look, man, this is the way it is. They're putting together a case. It's going to be bulletproof. They don't come at you unless all of the ducks are really nicely in a row, right? Find me that case out of the Southern District of New York where the lawyers went in and dazzled and their clients walked, right? I'll take you to lunch. I mean, a big case, not something small, but you're not going to find it. Bill says, Subramanian is a pro. He knows this will be the case of his career. He's going to cool as the other side of your pillow. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you, Bill. And I'll tell you something. This is a fascinating point, honestly, and absolutely worth talking about. This is a fascinating point because every single judge that is involved in this case realizes that this is their career. This is what's going to make them famous. This is going to end up in law school. They'll be teaching this case. All of them know it's going to be brought up on appeal. All of them know they're going to go through it like this with a fine-tooth comb, right? This is going to be epic for everybody involved. I think I don't want that on my case. I want the judge kick back, relax, and maybe screwing up a little bit. They joke all the time. If you've ever been in prison, this a million times, but your sentence comes down to whether or not the judge got laid by his wife the night before. What kind of eggs did she make that morning? Did the yolks run? Did he catch a green light on the way in? I've told the story before, man, but I got sentenced for these, a bunch of them. And a lot of them had those alphabets, like the AK and the AR and all of those things. And I happened to get sentenced the day after the San Bernardino shooting, where they used one of those alphabet guns, not one of mine, but the same kind. And I remember saying to my attorney as we were sitting there, you're in this plastic room. Everything in there's plastic. There's a plastic bench and there's a metal screen that you can see through, but you can't even press on it. It's hard as a stone, but that's how you can talk to your attorney. And I said to him, hey man, you don't think the San Bernardino thing is going to affect this? And he goes, no. He said, they don't let stuff like that get into court. I'm sure he watched it, but it's not. The first thing the dude says after we start is, Mr. Scoville, do you ever worry about the pew-pews that you had ending up in the hands of the people like the San Bernardino shooter? I swear to you, first thing he said. And me being the calm, cool, and collected person I am that doesn't make stupid mistakes and let his mouth get him in trouble, said, I didn't realize I was being charged with the San Bernardino shooting. And then I said other stupid things. I said, I'm not trying to be racist, but if the person I was selling to's name was Muhammad, I probably would have been more careful. You know what I mean? Like I was a criminal, but I wasn't trying to sell to anybody that was going to be going and doing anything crazy. And I'm not taking any crap from the dude. Unfortunately, like everything else, you are subject to the whims of the day that the people are having, right? I did not pick a great day to be sentenced. Of this, I promise you. I lost an absolute, any shot I had, right? I had been told all the way up until the day of the sentencing, literally until 5 minutes before we went in that we were looking at 34 to 38 months. And I was under the assumption, like the Alexander brothers were, that I was buying a little justice, right? I had gone through trial, I don't know how many times. I had gone through all of these different things in the past, right? This was the first time I was going in there with a really, really like high dollar mouthpiece. And I thought, spend this kind of money, you got to get some kind of a deal, right? No. I thought I literally got 3 times the sentence I thought I was going to get. And I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. And if Casper's still here, he'll get a laugh out of this. Because my attorney then said to me, yeah, but when you're done doing RDAP, you'll almost be out. All right, people, you're kidding me. He's not very good at phone. All right, people, I need to get on the phone with Mr. Atwood. I would love to continue this conversation. You want Timothy McVeigh? Selling to Timothy McVeigh. You know something, just real quick before I wrap this up? I feel horrible for the family of any of these people. I honestly feel terrible for the family. I'm sorry. Because these poor kids, this kid's going to come into a world where everybody already hates him, right? Where you're coming into a family like this is a nightmare for those kids. And for the wives, you know, there are people already saying the wife had to know. On a lot of these trips to the Hamptons, he brought women with him, like a wife with him kind of a thing. You know what? Don't jump to those kind of conclusions yet, please. For real. Let's not destroy this family just yet. I mean, obviously the brothers are worthless, right? Obviously. But their wives and all that, let's assume that they're victims in all of this too until we find otherwise, right? It seems like it might be a good idea. All right, people, I'm going to get off of this and talk to my friend Sean Atwood. Between now and the next time I see you, you know what you need to do? Reach out and try to save somebody. God bless everybody.